Hello, friends. Today we are going to have a little chat about a ship that recently got a little bit of a mention from CIG. We're talking, of course, about the Herald, the little ship that, frankly, right now, can't. Now, for those of you who may not be entirely familiar with the Herald is a ship that's been flight ready since 2016. This is a ship that we've been flying for 3 years now, or roughly. And as of yet, the Herald can't really do all that much. If you mess around with the armaments and you have a little fun with it, it can fight to a degree, though I think that if you were to take it into the dogfighting module and Arena Commander, you'd probably have a difficult time. NPCs, really not that much of a challenge, but other players, I mean, by all means, if you can take this thing into Arena Commander and post videos of you just destroying people with the Herald, hats off to you. Honestly, hats off and big respect, but the Herald is a ship that is pretty troubled. So anytime CIG mentions it, I immediately perk my ears up because I feel that it's a ship that needs a lot of love, right? And there's a number of things that we're going to go after, but primarily I want to kind of deal with something that CIG was talking about on Friday. And they did mention the Herald and some stuff that kind of has to do with the Herald. So I'm going to play a few clips for you. We're going to talk about them. Hopefully you'll enjoy it.
I'm just trying to imagine something. Here's wheat from planet England. What are your thoughts on specialty ship missions, like a hacking mission for the Herald, or a race against time in an M50, or a mining mission for a mining ship?
I'll refer back to my previous answers. Basically, we want to do them, but you can imagine that putting all that effort into a mission that only a small portion of the player base can play is not right at this moment. Yeah, we could be making missions for everyone, and we are making missions for everyone.
Now, I'm going to offer a counter argument to that statement, but first I feel that we have to kind of add in a few more elements from later on in that show to kind of, I guess, make my argument for me, or at least kind of set the parameters of what I'm going to talk about.
Speaking of careers, this person wants to be a hacker for hire. Can we hack the crime stat for someone else?
We desperately wanted to do this for 3.8, but then Socks came along and spoiled a lot of fun. Because so we could do it. We could
Socks,
like in 3.7, right? We could have done this because everyone's on their own server. There are 50 players in it, and we could just say show all the names of these 50 players, and you get to choose. Like, okay, this guy, and I'm going to get rid of this crime for him. But when we're talking about like a meshed server where everyone's together, it gets a lot more complicated. We have to, like, right now their crime stat and everything, and all their infractions are carried on them when they're loaded in, and when they're out, you can't get hold of that. And you can't get hold of it very easily. So we'd have to be able to ask the back end, like, and
it's
update
a persistence
that.
issue.
Yeah, update his persistence when he's not in the game, which is more difficult. And obviously there's also a UI. You'd have to actually search for people's names because there'd be that many. But yes, we totally want to do this, and you'll find that in the new hacking of the database that all the individual crimes are listed, which is really cool. And you have to hack each one individually, and depending on the reliability of your card, you may get caught halfway through. Like, basically you're not supposed to, as someone who works on the criminal database, go through and delete too many things, because then it starts to flag like this is unusual load of things you're deleting here. So now it's like all about, okay, I'll pick the worst, I'll get rid of that murder, and maybe I'll leave these fines. because the fines will be on there as well.
So, here's the argument that I'm going to make. And, when they're talking about the hacking, remember that they're saying that they can't do it right now because they're waiting basically for server-side object container streaming to make it into the game, to make it live, to function. Because otherwise, if it's not there, you can put in hacking, but it'll just completely break it and you'll have to rebuild it. So they don't want to do the same work twice. And so that's why this type of hacking that he's talking about is not in the game yet. Now, in the first clip, he talked about, hacking missions for the Herald specifically, and we don't want to make missions just for a small group of players. Well, I think that if you only look at things from a soft analysis point of view, if you just look at it, we make missions for the Herald, well, that doesn't apply to anybody else. I don't think that that's entirely true, because let me lay out kind of a scenario for you. Let's say the hacking that they were just talking about. What if you could do it remotely from satellites or, from around Korea or the, what is it, on Lyria? There's another police station on the surface of Lyria, I believe, where you can hack CrimeStat as well. What if you created a mission where if a player is remotely hacking from the Herald at one of these locations, maybe a comm satellite or Korea or Lyria, it creates a mission for everybody else who's on the legitimate side of the law and says, stop this hack. And so you have to go there, and if you've done hacking, you know how long it takes and how time consuming it is. You have to go there and you have to stop it. And for the Herald, the challenge is evading fire, obviously evading EMPs as well. Though I do think that the Herald is mentioned to be shielded against EMP. That was in the write-up for the ship, I believe. But, who knows if that's actually going to make it into the game. But if you have a mission for one ship that triggers missions for so many other ships, isn't it kind of a worthwhile pursuit then? And wouldn't it be great to have a ship that's been in the game for 3 years going on that actually can do something in the game now, apart from being a mediocre fighter? Well, actually, don't let the footage fool you, because these NPCs right here were more or less at a dead stop in space. I don't know. It's Star Citizen. It's not really a fighter, and you can't really carry cargo, and you have to get up steps to carry cargo into it, even if you could. So it's a dead ship in Star Citizen, and it's a notoriously dead ship. So when you're talking about, you're only making content for a very small portion of the community, are we talking about the amount of people who own Heralds? Or maybe we can take into account a little bit of the amount of people who bought Heralds, but who subsequently, sold them because the Heralds weren't doing anything in game. They're one of the few ships. Fighters can fight, cargo haulers can haul cargo, but the Herald can't do anything. Really, it's a personal transport, and on that note, it's not even a good one, even though, there are some changes that need to be made to its quantum, because frankly, the engines on it are the engines of a medium ship. We'll get to that in a second, but I think that if you were to make it so that the Herald could hack remotely within a certain restrictive range of its target, be it a communications satellite, Korea, or whatever, if you could make it so that happens and then other players could go and prevent it, then I think you would get a much better read on hacking as a mechanic altogether, because right now hacking really isn't necessary in the game. When people talk about, I got to remove my crime stat, dude, just park your ship at Hurston and walk in the door and just get gunned down. It's cheaper. The hacking chips cost a ridiculous amount of credits, frankly, and it's such an exercise to get in and start hacking down your crime stat, if you can even get in to do it in the first place, whereas you can just go and, just commit suicide at Hurston, and they're done, crime stat removed. Or you can just get interdicted by the police and let them kill you. Same thing, crime stat removed. Hacking as a mechanic as it's available in the game right now is frankly it's useless because of the boundaries that are placed on it. I think that adding remote hacking into the game and allowing players to trade for it, I think would be a really beneficial thing, and it would allow us to actually get some real test data on hacking versus just like, oh, I tried it a couple of times, which is most people tried it a couple of times. Too much of a headache, kind of broken, don't really care. Don't really need it, so who cares, right? So I think that while I agree that, you know, the server-side object container streaming is a very realistic limit, and you shouldn't build a system if you know that an upcoming system is just going to break it and you're going to have to redo it again. But with SOCs completed or functional, at least, I think revisiting this topic is something that should be a priority, because this kind of benefits a lot of things, not just one little ship. You know, earlier in that same episode, they were talking about whenever they have to do a mission, they gotta get the voice actor and all this, and we saw that with Tisha Pacheco and all these other characters, which really, frankly, haven't worked out all that well. They're frankly quite buggy right now. But what if when you went to Rudo, we dispense with all the fancy stuff and we just work with text for now for a tier 0 implementation? And in the beginning, when you work for Rudo, you get access to these little chips, right? So maybe something that you don't want to bother with, maybe something you don't want to use, but you use them for a couple of missions, you get things done. And then Rudo says, all right, you know what, I can trust you, let's graduate up to the next level. And you go down to these little boxes here on the lower shelf. Don't turn around, go back. Sorry. But yeah, you go to these little boxes here on the lower shelf, and these happen to fit into a slot in your Herald. So there it is, right in the racks. Let's see if we can get a better view, but you go down, you slide that box in there, and all of a sudden you have the ability to hack CrimeStat remotely within a certain very constrictive range of a communication satellite or Korea, and you can just kind of open up your comms gear with that box turned on, and now you can use this to get the same hacking display that we currently have, but you get it remotely, and all of a sudden the gameplay is accessible and interesting for people who fly the Herald. Possibly other electronic warfare ships could implement the same thing. You could use this to kind of kill two birds with one stone. Oh, here's the first module that you can actually buy and install in your ship, physically install it. You know, they made such a big deal of that with the Vanguard, showing you all the different modules and equipment that you have in these little tucked away closets. Well, here's a chance to implement actually putting one in your ship. And for everybody else that doesn't own a Herald or an electronic warfare ship, if you decide to expand that capability to other vessels, then they get the added content of being able to stop the Herald, and the Herald is a notoriously bad fighter. One other thing that you can do for the Herald, and I'm showing it here, is these engines on the Herald. These are not fighter engines, all right? These engines are next level. So this ship shouldn't face the same quantum restrictions, for the love of God, as a fighter does. The Herald is built for interstellar, not interplanetary, interstellar data transfer. That is the purpose of the vessel. It shouldn't have the same limitations as a fighter. It is clearly, it may have roughly the dimensions of a fighter, but it is not designed to do the same thing. It's not just a question of, well, it's really fast. It should be able to travel a long distance, but I think that with these hacking changes, it doesn't just create content for Herald owners. It creates content for other players as well, whether it's combat content or whether it's services and goods that players can trade for to receive these hacking services. Hacking right now is kind of a joke. But if you kind of go through, and once server-side object container streaming is here, if you look at kind of tying these things together with the Herald, yeah, you're doing a thing for maybe one ship, or you can expand it, but I think that overall the gain would be for the whole community, and you'd actually get to see hacking and the resulting economy that comes with hacking develop in a real way, rather than frankly, the garbage implementation that we currently have, which really, because of the restrictive rules of the game universe, isn't worth doing in the first place. At least those are my thoughts on the topic. Love to see what you guys are going to say in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.